Powered by Arkansas, for Arkansas. This is Inside Arkansas Live.
And welcome in Inside Arkansas Live here on this beautiful day here in the great state of Arkansas. I'm your host, John Neighbors, alongside Curtis Wilkerson and Andrew Ellis, and appreciate each and every one of you for making us a part of your afternoon this afternoon as we are finally into 2025. Hope everybody had enjoyed their New Year celebrations. A lot of you celebrated in style. Some of you just stayed home. Some of you didn't do anything because you cheered as just a regular day, but still, we welcome in 2025. And fellas, how we feeling? How was the New Year's holiday for everybody?
Pretty good. I was one of those that just stayed home, but it was all right, man. Hung out with my dad, watched some college football playoff, and yeah, it was a good time. I got to give you props once again on the intro. Made me smile again, John. You mixed it up. Kind of reminded me of like the music you get when you're on hold with your insurance company, but there was more of a vibe to it. You know, it got me ready for the show. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
well,
I like that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, you're gonna put pressure on me now when it's like I want good vibes and you just smile every time we see the show. So I'm just gonna have to put in a new song every day with the show just to keep the smiles going, get the vibes high.
One of these days, Curtis is just gonna be like when the show starts, he's just gonna be sitting there with a thumbs down, like he's not gonna like it. So I'm waiting for that day. But no, yeah, New Year's is pretty much one of my least favorite holidays. It might be the least favorite. And I went with the just no plans for New Year's at all. Didn't I was in bed when it became midnight. Didn't do anything crazy. And I think that's the way to go. I think that's the way to go. New Year's Day was actually pretty fun. Had watching football, went to walk-ons, had a great time.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's what it needs to be about. That's what it needs to be about. So, because there was a lot that happened on New Year's and New Year's Day, New Year's holiday when it comes to football and everything, which I know we'll talk about. We'll get into an SEC update presented by Rhoback, getting a little of the betting lines with Bet Saracen. It kind of feels like a Monday, even though it's not. It is actually a Thursday. So we will be previewing a little bit of the stuff going on in the sports world. And, of course, get into your chats, folks. So if you want to end the conversation, just hit us up in the chat. And we'll do our best to read the good ones, or at least the ones that we find entertaining and interesting. But we got to start today with the show with the reports that have been coming out that Arkansas is not going to fully have their staff intact from last season coming into this next season, as this was being reported originally by Matt Zenitz, that Georgia State is expected to hire assistant secondary coach, or the defensive back coach, cornerback coach, whatever you want to call him, but Deron Wilson. He's going to be hired as their new defensive coordinator. He's been at Arkansas the past 2 years. He was also worked at Florida and was a defensive coordinator at McNeese State. But it looks like he is going to be moving on. So I just still felt like there was going to be some sort of change in the coaching staff, just given the trends and everything. But guys, when you heard the news of Deron Wilson being at least reportedly leaving Arkansas for Georgia State, what was your first reaction?
I'm happy for him, man. I really am. I think that's cool. If you're going to lose staff members, this is the way you want to lose them, in my opinion. You don't want to have to fire a dude. You definitely don't want to lose one of your coordinators right now. But when you lose a position coach, it's going to be, a coordinator somewhere else. That's usually signs that he's, well respected and doing a pretty good job. Now, I realize Arkansas secondary sucked last year, so you can take that for whatever it's worth. But I guess maybe I'm wrong. But if I had to, this is a weird game to play, but if I had to pick an assistant that I'd be fine with leaving, it would probably be him, because you already have Marcus Woodson, who is back there coaching the D-backs anyway. And so there's already going to be some familiarity. I don't know who he was responsible for recruiting out of the portal, or, whatever, like if there's going to be an impact there. But at the end of the day, I think it's cool, man. Anytime you can develop that coaching tree, that's a good thing for you. So good for him and wish him luck.
Yeah, good for him would kind of sum up my reaction as well, where I'm like, okay, yeah, nice. You get a nice little promotion. We only got to hear from Deron Wilson a couple times. Usually in fall camp was like our annual get to hear from all the position coaches. And I was always, like, for the most part, pretty impressed with them. I mean, most of the coaches, they're pretty well-spoken guys. Like, they all come across as solid, nice coaches that are doing a good job. And so, no surprise to see a lot of these guys that, I mean, he's a young guy also. I mean, I'd imagine he's going to continue to try and climb that ladder. So we wish him the best of luck. And yeah, you touched on it, Curtis. Having Marcus Woodson as your secondary coach, and we'll see what they do. I'm sure they're going to hire, a 10th assistant to replace him. We'll see if that ends up being in the secondary. I actually wouldn't be surprised if that 10th assistant went somewhere else, whether it was a second D line coach, probably not a linebackers coach because Travis Williams is going to do that. But I've always actually, for the last couple of years, been a little like confused by the dynamics there on the DB room because Marcus Woodson is, I believe he's like the associate head or co-DC, and he's always been a secondary coach. But Deron Wilson's also always been there. And at practice, you always see them they'll usually split up guys, and you'll have some talking to them. So I don't know like how the dynamics are going to really change in that room. But if there's one coach on this entire staff that I really am impressed with, it's Marcus Woodson. And so having him really makes me feel a lot better to where, like, regardless of what Arkansas does to replace Deron Wilson, I'm not terribly worried about that group. And obviously, they really struggled. And I think that the talent in the DB room, we can talk about whether or not that's up to par. But Marcus Woodson, I'm a huge fan of. And I also just, at the end of the day, I feel like Travis Williams, as the defensive coordinator at Arkansas, has kind of had this trend where every time when he took over, we were like, oh man, he's walking into a dumpster fire. This defense was horrible last year under Barry Odom. They're going to stink under him. And they ended up being good. We had mass exodus to the linebacker room, and we were like, oh man, that's going to be horrible. How's he going to replace that? And he found a way to replace it. And so even though Travis Williams, I know he's a little bit of a polarizing figure. I know some people like him more than others. Ultimately, I feel like he finds a way to make it work no matter what. And so we'll see what this Arkansas defense is able to do. But this isn't a move where I see it and I'm like, oh man, another huge blow for Arkansas. They're screwed. Good for Deron Wilson. We hope he does well, and we'll see what Arkansas does to replace him.
Yeah, and also with him, it's like, from my understanding, that Marcus Woodson was more of the safeties, and then he was cornerbacks. It is kind of how I think the dynamic worked out. But yeah, it was interesting to see that because we've seen in a lot of cases two coaches coach the same unit, but we've seen a coach with defensive tackles and defensive ends. We've seen a lot of differences there. But yeah, I think this is one of those deals that you can have it both ways, where you can say it's like, I don't think anybody should be like, oh, thank goodness we got rid of this clown. But there's also like, hey, wish him nothing but the best of luck. It's a great move for him, which it is. I mean, because all these coaches that are assistants or position coaches or whatever, they want to move up the ladder. They want to do some things. And I think going and becoming the defensive coordinator of Georgia State is a great move for him. And I do also agree that given the circumstances of other coaches around the area and guys I'm sure Sam Pittman or Marcus Woodson or even Travis Williams have connections with, it's not going to be too difficult of a role to fill. The interesting thing for me is going to be about, like you said, Curtis, how much involvement did he have in recruiting of some of these guys that they got out of the transfer portal? Are some of them going to be like, okay, well, now I don't want to go to Arkansas because that was my coach, and that's the reason I went there. And if he's gone, I don't want to transfer anymore. Is it going to be that type of impact? Was it more of a Woodson thing? Is this come as a shock to some of these players? Did they know it was coming? I mean, that's going to be the interesting impact, I think, is not necessarily just, is Arkansas going to get worse or better in the secondary? It's more of, what about these players that are coming in the secondary? Are any of them going to have a change of mind because this guy is leaving to go to Georgia State? Yeah,
because I mean, they had to really revamp that entire part of the defense, So, and they've got a guy on campus right now in Caleb Wooden out of Auburn, who's a piece in the secondary that they're hoping to add. So that's interesting. But yeah, to your point, I mean, right away, you can kind of see on social media, I'll tell you who's not dealing with this very well. It's Keyshawn Davila, the junior college corner, top ranked JUCO corner in the country, who they picked up early in portal season. Now he's a junior college transfer or whatever. But as soon as the report came out, he tweeted out God's plan. As soon as another report went out, he just quote tweeted it with a broken heart emoji. So, he's not taking it very well. I'm sure he has relationships with other guys on staff, and they're on the defense, and but maybe that's just one to keep an eye on, because he seems like he's upset, and it sounds like there's probably a pretty strong relationship there.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I mean, I feel like just the other day we were covering Keyshawn Davila's commitment, and right in the middle, was that he the one that committed right in the middle of the UCA basketball game? I think it was halftime that game that we did that, or maybe that was Connie Walker.
That was the Oklahoma guy. They were right
around the same time. But I will say, and I mean, I'm not trying to throw shade, not trying to knock anybody, but it'd be one thing if Arkansas had like 7 awesome corners coming in from the high school ranks in the portal, but they really didn't recruit the secondary much at all in this high school class. So I can't imagine a ton of those guys. That's going to be like a huge hit there. And I think Davila's a nice player. I like Jordan Young is another nice player from Cincinnati. I like him, but it's not like there's not much you could really pick from from Arkansas's corners in particular with this portal class. And so I'm sure there will be some questions to be answered. We'll see how it all shakes out. If any of those guys decide to explore other options, we'll also see, like you said, how it affects their recruitment moving forward. But I do think that's where having a guy like Marcus Woodson to kind of bridge that gap. I mean, if I were a player, if I'm Davila and Marcus Woodson calls me right now and he's like, "Hey man, don't decommit. We're fine." I'd be like, "Sure, I'll take your word for it." Like, he's just that kind of guy. And so again, like, I'm not trying to downplay Deron Wilson's role on the staff or like how he affects the program, but I don't know if this is going to be one that's going to change the entire direction of the program. But it is going to be interesting to see the kind of ripple effect in who they hire and if any of those players like a Davila end up exploring their other options.
Yeah, because I feel like this is kind of one of a few coaches that have been in the cornerback situation or whatever that Arkansas's had over the past few years. I know that you've had defense coordinator changes and everything too that go along with it. But it is fascinating because it's not all about Deron Wilson. I know that, or it's got Marcus Woodson involved too. But just the secondary in general, specifically the cornerbacks, we'll look at that. For the 2 years that Wilson was the coach of the cornerbacks at Arkansas, considering where they were before to where they are now, I mean, is there a grade that you put on the job that's been done at the cornerback position specifically? And we'll throw in nickelback in there too, but just at that specific position with the players, with the development, with everything. I mean, how much, if any, did it improve over the 2 years that Deron Wilson was the head coach over here?
Well, that's kind of tough to say because I thought that there was some pretty promising stuff last year with the way Jalen Braxton emerged, and some of the other pieces that you had in there. But I mean, this year it wasn't very good. Now, I guess injury played a part in that. Like, you lost your projected number one for whatever reason in Braxton. So you didn't have that already put him behind the 8 ball. But the rest of it wasn't good. I mean, hell, you got to a situation after that Ole Miss game where you just had to do wholesale changes. Like, they flipped every starter back there, including their corners. They moved Hudson Clark back to corner. No offense, John, but so it wasn't good, that situation at all. And it was a combination, I think, of recruiting, a little bit of tough luck and like coaching is taken into account there too. So, over the course of the 2 years, I'd probably go, I don't know, C or so. But I mean, for last year, it's hard not to go with at least a D for me because it was one of the worst passing defenses in the country.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, and it definitely is a tale of 2 years because, I mean, 2023, like you mentioned, you had the emergence of Jalen Braxton as a true freshman, which was a huge story. It was a very promising development. Nudie McLaughlin, by the way, for all of the controversy with his concussion and his issues with Sam Pittman or whatever, was one of the highest graded corners in the entire country, had a really good year, should have gotten drafted. You had some, you had some promising pieces there. And then this year, I feel like it just, there wasn't really much progress made there. Keon Stewart was fine. He ended up kind of finishing the year as Arkansas's probably their most consistent corner. And again, like that kind of speaks to how much that group really struggled. You nailed it there. Like, if you're moving Hudson Clark to corner, where he started his career and had some nice moments, but if you're moving him back halfway through the year, like, it kind of speaks to the issues you have in the secondary and your ability to create some of that depth. We haven't gotten to see a lot of these young guys. I mean, Selman Bridges got in there for a little bit the other day. So who knows, maybe some of these young guys that they recruited will just magically turn into stars and we can kind of look back and be like, oh, okay, there's something there. But I think you had a nice player in Jalen Braxton, letting him leave. Hard for me not to knock that. Jaheim Singletary, who's a former 5-star recruit, has been on campus for 2 years now, hasn't really developed into a starting level SEC player. And so, yeah, I have a hard time giving him a super promising grade. I think C is probably about as good as you could ask for, or as good as he could ask for from us.
Well, and also too, I started thinking about this, and this is not just like a Deron Wilson thing. It's just in the secondary in general. I feel like every single year under Sam Pittman, there has been at least one pretty important or pretty big contributor that's had something go awry. Like, you had 2 years where Jalen Catalon was out with an injury and then out with another injury. Even back to 2020, remember Jerry Jacobs played the second game of the year and he's like, no, I'm out. And he ended up playing in the NFL. So, I mean, he was a really solid contributor there. You had Jalen Braxton this year out for the entire season, essentially. He was your best secondary player. And it just, didn't transpire the way you wanted it to. The Dwight McLaughlin and all that. I know that everything's going to be happening, but I just find it fascinating that in the secondary under Sam Pittman, and it's not a Sam Pittman thing, I'm just saying in his tenure, there's been like one big contributor that's something's happened. Injuries, getting benched, not playing, wanting to transfer, whatever it is. And I think that's not saying that, if those things didn't happen, Arkansas secondary and their pass defense would be incredible. But it does just kind of make you wonder what the stats would actually look like if they didn't constantly have these injuries, these issues, these players, all the problems that came along with them, and having an actual healthy secondary. Because it felt like most of the time, the guys that were involved were their best secondary players on the team, and it wasn't even close.
Yeah. I mean, and Quincy McAdoo, it's just, it's just one thing after another. And it seems like it's all kind of been on the back end of the defense. That's a good point. And you think you're deep until you're not. You know what I mean? And if they would have had all their healthy bodies this year, then maybe it would have been a different story. But that wasn't the case. But in other areas, you just have to kind of find a way to overcome that. I think it might just get exploited a little bit more, on the back end of a defense. You make one mistake back there and boom, it's over the top and it's a touchdown. You're the last line of defense. So, you don't have people behind you to pick up the slack there. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how that's worked out if you really think about it. And, we'll see what they wind up doing. I'm going to be interested to see, Andrew, I thought that was a good point that you brought up about, they'll probably fill this position because they're going to have it open, but do you add another person to the secondary, or is it going to be a different position coach for a different spot? Like what that might look like. It'll be pretty interesting to see what they do.
Honestly, I think if you're looking for like a way out of this and by the way, like we're not trying to act as if though this Deron Wilson departure is like a game changer. So if anyone thinks that that's what we're saying, like that's not really it. But I think if you're looking for a path forward for Arkansas, I would say finding someone who's got a couple transfers committed to them might be the way to go. Maybe bring in a secondary, a corners coach or whatever it is that's got some guys on board already. But yeah, John, I think that's a very good point. I never really thought about it that way, that Sam Pittman's entire tenure, secondary has been like building depth back there. And it's hard to build depth in college football really anywhere, especially in the SEC. But y'all remember Sam Carter, all the crazy drama that was going on with him, where it was like, apparently the players hated him and he was a meanie, and then he ends up going to Ole Miss. Miles Slusher quits the team as well in 2022.
Yeah,
like
another one.
You just always had weird issues. And so if there's one thing Arkansas can hope to do this offseason, you've got to create some sort of stability there. And we'll see how these transfers they brought in, like a Connie Walker or Davila, who apparently someone in the chat said he deleted his repost now. So I'm sure someone texted him and was like, hey, don't do that. We'll see if they're able to get some of these guys to hit. But really, I feel like it's got to come from these young guys in the room, like a Summon Bridges or like an Akari Johnson or Jaden Allen or whoever it is. You've got to find some type of spark out of any of those guys. Because if you just look at it on paper, Arkansas secondary doesn't have a ton of depth right now going into this next season, and now you're losing another secondary coach. And so I guess if there's a positive spin from this, you lose a coach from one of the worst secondaries in the country and a group that didn't really have a super positive outlook anyway. So maybe you can maybe you replace them with someone that can bring a little bit of a spark, because the Arkansas secondary could really need it.
Yeah, it makes me also wonder too, is this going to be if they say, assuming that they go with another cornerback coach or secondary coach to replace Deron Wilson, is it going to be something that Pittman goes to Marcus Woodson, says, all right, well, go find your guy, whoever you want? Is it more of a Travis Williams decision on who he wants? Maybe it's a joint effort. I don't really know, but I laughed when I tweeted out or quote tweeted about Wilson in that report. And somebody was asking me, he's like, oh, so who would be possible replacements? And I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I have zero.
Let me check the hot board real quick of corner coaches.
I couldn't name you a single cornerbacks coach in the country.
No,
so I don't know.
No, like no offense, but I was lucky if I got Deron Wilson's name. I mean, it was just how little it is. So, but it's of all the coaches' positions to lose out on, that one might be all right. I think you're going to be fine. And it doesn't suddenly change my idea of what the wins losses are looking like or what the recruiting is looking like or anything like that. Now, if you lose any other staff in the head or any of the other coaches, let's maybe have a conversation about it. But yeah, again, congratulations to him moving up in the world, becoming defense coordinator. That's big time. So we'll see how it all plays out. But a few chats that we'll get into before we move on. I want to shout out Jason Doyle for a super chat. No message, but anyways, appreciate you as always.
That's what we like.
Yeah, just throwing it out there. We like it. Double H says though, do we have a medical personnel or personal issue on campus? I think he needs personnel, but we've had weird injury issues with multiple sports, Hunter Diets, Catalan, Braxton, NSJ, etc. Just a thought. I mean, I don't think so. I don't. I mean, how do you just because there's been some injuries and stuff? It's like I don't think there's some sort of issue. I just sometimes think football's football or sports are sports, and I guarantee if you go around the country, look at other SEC schools, they probably had a lot of things that are similar to this when it comes to injuries, because unfortunately, it's just part of the game.
Yeah, people get hurt, and it's a patient and care team, combination of things when people get re-injured or things linger or whatever. Like, you've also got to have compliant patients. What are you asking in terms of what the problem is? Are we talking about the strength and conditioning staff? Are we talking about the athletic training staff? Are we talking about the team doctors? Are we talking about the surgeons? It's a complex thing that I don't think any of us are qualified to really give an answer on, and it'd be foolish to really speculate on it.
100%. Like there's a lot more. It's not like there's one Arkansas sports doctor out there who's just seeing all these guys. Like, I don't know if you can tie the string to all these guys, especially when you're talking about like Hunter Dietz hurting his elbow as a pitcher that throws 100, and then Nick Smith, who went and saw a specialist in California. Like, these are just there's a lot of things at play here. And so I think football would be the one I would maybe have some concern about, just because there's been a lot of weird stuff going on with football. But
right.
I don't know if that's our place to be like, yeah, Arkansas's medical staff
now
sucks.
Yeah, and now you also have to basically put like players' agents and stuff in that conversation. You said Nick Smith, and I was like, it's just there's so many people that are involved in that, it becomes a pain in the butt. But
yeah, it really does. I also like Finch saying, he's like, he says, can we just let Hudson Clark be the new secondary coach? Why not? I mean,
just promote him right away from starting corner to second to corners coach.
Yep, absolutely. Just let him.
He said he was a high IQ player, so
yeah, it's true. It's true. And I don't know. He's going to try to go in the NFL, and then so maybe he gets drafted, and
let him finish his pro career before we give him the head coach or the secondary coach job.
Yeah, let's just all settle down before that.
He's got a great story, but it's not a Tom Brady story. So
no, not yet.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
It's about. Oh wait, yes. Who said that?
Anthony Switzer.
Thank you.
Oh yes. That is good.
I didn't know what that meant at first, and I had to kind of like really think about it and go through it. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Gotcha. Anthony, just a Tom Brady story. Shut up. All right. Let's, again, we'll get to a few more of your chats, folks, but there's a lot of things going on right now. Curtis is going to leave us apparently at about 12:55 today, as there's old basketball action happening because Arkansas is playing Tennessee, #1 team in the country, in Knoxville this Saturday. And is it Chin Coleman that we get to hear from?
Kenny Payne.
Or Kenny Payne. Okay.
Or maybe it's Chin Coleman. I thought it was Kenny Payne.
You're probably right. More than
crazy. I had Chuck Martin in my head.
It's Kenny Payne.
Okay.
Leave it to the basketball guy to know which coach is talking. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. We should just run it up there. But hey, we'd like to tell you, the roulette wheel and see who assistant coach is going to be joining us. But yeah, so
notice how none of us thought it was John Calipari.
None of us even thought that it could possibly be Calipari.
There ain't no way. He's got bigger fish to fry than to preview the #1 team in the country going on the road. So, but yeah, so he's going to leave us for a little bit. So we'll talk some basketball, and depending on how long the press conference is, we may have Curtis join us afterwards and give us a little recap of it. But it was a big week when it comes to college football. So we'll talk about that as part of your SEC update presented by Rhoback. Go to Rhoback.com, use promo code HOGSBY20, and you get 20% off your first purchase. A lot of you, after the holiday season, you want a little bit more of the apparel. Maybe some of your relatives got some of that Rhoback. You're like, man, I want some of that too. Well, don't worry. The promo code's still worthy, and they still got plenty of it. So you can check it out, Rhoback.com. For all the hoodies, quarter zips, shorts, joggers, everything, it's Rhoback.com. Use HOGSBY20 for 20% off your first purchase. So there's a lot of games to get to, fellas, but we'll just have to start with really the college football playoff. And a lot of it was not really that great of games for the most part, but it was, I will say, on the serious note, very unfortunate to see the Sugar Bowl have to be postponed until today, because of the awful terrorist act that happened down there and killing quite a few people. And it was just awful. So totally understand that. And that game's going to be at 3:00 this afternoon between Georgia and Notre Dame. So that was just, again, an awful tragedy, and totally understand that. But you still had 3 other games that transpired when it came to the playoff. And we can start with a few other ones, but I want to start with that Texas Arizona State game, guys. I mean, it looked like in the very beginning that it was going to be another blowout city of a game. Texas gets up 14-0. They had a punt return for a touchdown. Just absolute domination in the beginning. But Arizona State slowly, surely chipping back and back and back into the game, ends up going to overtime, and Texas ends up winning in double overtime, 39-31. But what an incredible game, some incredible performances, and one that Texas is very fortunate enough to get out of there with a win. But that was what playoff football should be all about right there.
Yeah, that was awesome. That comeback, the Scattaboo dude, he's something else, man. When he went from just like grinding it out for every yard he could get to, you know what, screw it, I'm going to throw a touchdown pass. I'm going to catch a long pass. He literally did everything. He wound up being the MVP of a game that he lost. So was really impressive. But yeah, at the end of the day, as great of a game as that was, I got to admit it, because I've been harsh on him. Quinn Ewers just put his meat on the table at the end of the game, like back-to-back plays there, some absolute seeds, and shout out to them for getting it done. But that was so much fun. And I loved seeing Texas be on the ropes like that. I wish they wouldn't have won the game. It would have been an awesome story otherwise. The coach is younger than me at Arizona State. It's ridiculous, man. But that was a hell of a fun game. The crazy, was it targeting? Was it not targeting? And then the back and forth in overtime. Sometimes you just got to get, belly to back suplexed into the end zone to score. There's so much cool stuff about that. That was a really, really fun watch. By far the best game we've seen so far in the playoff.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun game. Shout out to the real sharps who live bet Arizona State plus 22.5. That was nice, which ended up being not in doubt at all out of nowhere. But yeah, awesome game. By the way, it was definitely targeting. Like, I'm not gonna throw a huge fit,
yeah.
cry too much about it. It was definitely targeting. Like, if we, and I agree, like sometimes targeting can be a little weird, but like that seemed to be textbook targeting. But yeah, Arizona State 4th and 13 brings the house against Texas and Quinn Ewers, and he makes what at the time I believe was like his first good throw of the day. Because he both quarterbacks really struggled, I feel like, in regulation. But yeah, Ewers, when it counted most, made a ton of huge plays. So good for him stepping up. And yeah, Texas was definitely on the ropes, was shaping up to be an all-time choke job. I mean, kicker, Bert Auburn. We were talking about the Oregon kicker whose name is like Atticus Sappington or whatever. Bert Auburn is a funny name, and he's a funny looking dude, but missed back-to-back kicks. And I thought it was so funny. After he kicked the last one, there was like 3 seconds left, and it was like a 37-yarder or something like that. And Sark gets in his face and is like giving him, and Tessitore, I love Tessitore, and I thought he did a good job down the stretch of that game. He was like, look at that coaching from Sark. That's a leader of men right there. Get it. And then he just hits it right off the uprights. It was so funny. But yeah, it would have been awesome to see Texas lose. But honestly, games like that are like what make college football special. You have the ragtag group. It was Scattaboo. You got the little 5'10" white running back who's had a crazy year. You've got the second-year coach who's taken this team that shouldn't be there at all into this situation. They're going up against Texas with all these 5 stars, all these NFL guys. Like, that's what college football is all about. And I'm just glad we got to see it, and that the nerds who hate the football playoff and hate watching more college football games, they had to admit that was a pretty awesome game. Shout out to the former Hogs, by the way, Miles Rouser, who never actually played at Arkansas. I think he was a signing day weird situation with his grades there, but he was playing for Arizona State. Jordan Crook got a ton of PT. Good to see the Hogs in the playoff.
Yep, that's the only way that they would be able to get into it. Yeah, and as far as the targeting thing, I would have agreed with that could have cost him the game if it did up costing him the game in that. But when Arizona State had Texas on 4th and 13 in overtime, where all they have to do is just not let them get a first down on 4th and 13 and they win, it's hard to say that was the reason that they ended up losing. But it was a big play. And I'm going to bring up, because people in the chat are saying this, like, you didn't lead with the crown and helmet, wasn't targeting. Okay, there's a amount of people that are saying this. Folks, you can say whatever you want, but when every single rules analyst and people who actually know the letter of the law across the board on SportsCenter, on ESPN, on all these officials and everybody saying that was targeting, sorry, I'm going to believe them, not you, because you say, wow, it just wasn't targeting. It was just a good, clean hit. No, it was. It was 100% targeting. So I don't know what are you basing it off of? When the rules experts are saying it was, I'm sorry, I'm going to go with them. Then you just saying, yeah, it wasn't targeting. Come on now. It was.
Crown of the helmet is by definition like a thing for targeting, but it's not the only way to get targeting.
Criteria.
Right. You can if your helmet's a helmet and it's forcible contact to the head or neck area, defenseless receiver, like there's a lot. Like there's not like one specific way to get targeting.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, pick your poison on how many of things went down. But
like the other thing too is it just goes to tell you that they've got to figure out a way. Like it's like Floyd just put in the chat. Nobody knows what targeting is or what it isn't. And sometimes it's called when it's convenient, and other times it's not when it's not. And I think that's the bigger issue here, is that there can be so much gray area with something that's so important.
Yeah. And then throwing in the fact that they review it and they still don't like come. So it's like, I can understand if it was a bang bang play and there's no review, but even when you have a chance to review it and you say it wasn't,
yeah,
it's like how does this happen? How does that make sense? But it was an incredible game. I was shocked to see in the box score, but I mean, Texas had averaged 1.8 yards a carry. I mean, Arizona State just shut them down. Quinn Ewers had some really gutsy plays, but yeah, Scatabo, man, that guy was out there. He had a reception for a touchdown. He had the 2 rushing touchdowns. He threw a touchdown pass. Dude was all over the place.
He had the one touchdown
up everywhere.
Yeah, he had the one touchdown where like they had him stuffed behind the line of scrimmage, and I turned away, and he somehow ended up in the end zone. It was crazy where he just like kept fighting forward. And by the way, he had to earn like every yard he got because Texas' defensive front, they were stout, man. Like they were standing up against that run pretty well, but he somehow found a way to squirt on through there a few times.
Yeah, I mean it was just good old fashioned fun football for a change, because it was nice because in the playoffs. We haven't got really much of that, but there were some bowl games that were good. But the other one, at least it wasn't a close game, but maybe a little bit of a surprise to everybody. Oregon just got the brakes beat off of them by Ohio State. And the final score was 41-21. It wasn't even that close.
No.
It was 34-0 in the second quarter. I mean, listen, I know that's the playoffs and it's crazy, but that was one thing I would have never guessed. Even if Ohio State would have won, okay, but to just get destroyed Oregon like they did was pretty crazy.
Seems to me like old Michigan poked the bear.
Maybe so.
You know, and they got and Ryan Day and that staff got so heavily criticized after that game because it was almost like Ohio State completely abandoned their identity against Michigan. It was like, no, we're going to prove that we can be more physical than them and we're going to run it between the tackles. Bullcrap. That's not who you are. And then they beat the crap out of Tennessee. They beat the crap out of Oregon. They look like they should be the 1 seed, and they probably should be based on the talent that they have on that roster. That is a freaking buzzsaw right now. That was impressive, man. There was one time I looked up, and it was just funny. You know how people do the like they poke the statistics when they can. It's like, oh, Ohio State, 14 points, Oregon, 11 yards. And they just kept doing that throughout the course of the first half. And it was just getting uglier and uglier the entire time. Man, yeah, that was really, really impressive. Talk about some revenge for Will Howard after the way it ended the first time they played. My goodness, man.
Yeah, apparently home field advantage at Oregon is worth like 30 points. Because I mean, it is just kind of funny that these two teams played earlier in the year. And I know that was a while ago, but it's like, I mean, and Oregon won a very close, hard-fought game where it seemed like we came away from that game thinking those two teams were about even. It seems like they're very much not even right now. So credit to Ohio State. Credit to Ryan Day for getting his group to not just quit on themselves. I mean, because, look, you're in the playoff. It's not hard to get motivated for it. But after that Michigan game, I mean, there were people calling for his job. There were people questioning so many things about this Ohio State team and program. So for them to come out and play their 2 best games of the season in back-to-back games, which, by the way, everyone that complained about Ohio State, you're like, how can the playoff be a good thing when you lose to Michigan and you have 2 losses and you're still in the playoff? It's like, well, teams get better. And again, if Ohio State if they beat Texas by double digits and then they win the national title against whoever, like, it's going to be really hard for any of us to be like, nah, they didn't deserve to be there. They didn't deserve to have that chance. And so it would be actually funny for all the pissing and moaning that everybody's done. If a team like Ohio State wins the playoff this year, it would kind of like justify the entire existence of the 12-team playoff, which just would be extremely satisfying to watch, like the Herb Streets and Pates of the world cry cry themselves to sleep. It would be good. But also, I would say you mentioned Will Howard, who, by the way, is like not great. Like he is all year. I've kind of wondered. I'm like, how did Ohio State end up with this dude as their quarterback when they could have had, you'd think, their pick of the litter? They ran off Kyle McCord. Credit to him, man. Just went out there and let it hang. And what he ended up throwing, I don't know what he ended up throwing for statistically, because like he got 34-0. He didn't have to throw too much in the second half, but it makes their game against Michigan, where they did, like you said, Curtis, try and play the tough guy game. When you see all these athletes, they have a receiver and them pushing the ball downfield, it's like, why the hell would you try and run the ball between the tackles when you got Jeremiah Smith? So it's cool to watch that offense fire on all cylinders. Shout out to Chip Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, is Ohio State the best team in the college football playoff right now? I mean, is that our betting favorite right now to win it all?
They're the most talented team, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely think they're the best. I mean, honestly, let's think about it for a second. Who would be the next best? Penn State has probably looked the next best. Like that was a nice moment for Quinn Ewers there. I think I texted you guys at one point and I said Texas might wind up being the most overrated champion in a long, long time. I'm still not quite buying it with them. I think Ohio State looks like the better team right now. I'm really interested to see this game today. Because Georgia is Georgia, but what are they going to look like with this Gunnar Stockton dude at quarterback? And they've just been more vulnerable than they have been here in recent years. But I still just don't know if I can see a world where Notre Dame beats them. I thought they looked good in their game against Indiana. So I don't know, man.
Georgia tonight, this is a retirement bet. If you're like 57 years old, you've been working hard your whole life, you can retire in a few years, but you don't might empty the bank account on Georgia tonight. They're about to win by like 27.
Penn State is the team that beat the absolute hell out of SMU, and then they beat the hell out of Boise. They got a clear path, but they've been very impressive doing it. So,
yeah.
Well, don't forget about the game they just played, bro.
Well, and also it's like, that's kind of our point, is that like, who is the next best team? Like it might be Penn State, which in Ohio State's already beat them, which just kind of speaks to how we've evolved so much.
Yeah. Well, and also going back to the Ohio State and Ryan Day thing, I think it's just so funny where that's what the playoff has done, because before even at the 14 playoff, Ohio State would not be in the playoff at all. Yeah. And there were people that wanted Ryan Day fired after the loss to Michigan. A lot of Ohio State people did. And people were taking their own opinion on it. But now this is what the playoffs done, is how kind of funny and awkward is it? What if he goes out and wins the championship, which he might? I mean, suddenly you're going to look like
probably the favorite right now, right?
I would
like
think.
Betting favorite?
I would have to think, yeah, maybe check bet Saracen, but like that to me is the funniest thing of just what the playoff has done, where the previous years, who knows, maybe he would have even been fired if they didn't have the chance of getting into the playoff. And here they are having a chance to even win a national championship. It's just funny how all that plays out. But it was just nice to have one good playoff game for a change. And that Ohio State one wasn't very good, but it was also an upset too. So because we were going chalk the entire time, then Penn State gets the win, and then of course Ohio State gets the big victory there too. So, but yeah, we're going to see how it all plays out. And just to clarify, so now we have, is it Penn State plays Texas? Or
Texas and Ohio State play. The Penn State is going to play the winner of Georgia Notre Dame today.
Got you. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, so yeah, that'll be really interesting. Some other games of note though from the SEC as far as bowl games go since the last time we were able to talk with everybody. But Michigan beats Alabama, so there's that for whatever that means. Really disappointing year. 9-4, the first season since 2007. And Alabama has not ended with double-digit wins. What a weird time. But I don't even know if they care.
They don't. Yeah. That bowl game meant nothing.
No.
The bowl game definitely did mean nothing. But it is just kind of funny that Bama was like the team that everyone was like crying should have been in the playoff, because if you're going to do the 12 best teams. So it is just kind of funny.
Yeah.
That's true. But then also at the beginning of the year, this was the time when a lot of people weren't really buying it with Bama, that they were even going to be in the, as good as they typically are. And then they beat Georgia early in the year, and all of a sudden people are like, oh no, they're ahead of schedule. Yeah, they kind of were what people wound up thinking they were coming into the season. But you just, regardless of how it happened, you can't lose 4 games in a season. at Alabama, and you dang sure can't do it if you're a first-year coach over there, and you can't do it while some of those losses in those 4 are Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. So that's he's not well. Would he be on the hot seat next year, or is it like
so? Maybe as of right now, maybe not quite, but he's 1 game away. Like if they lose, I don't know what their schedule is. Whoever they play, like early on, their first marquee game, they lose it. All of a sudden, I mean, this is the world we live in, man. Like I don't think Bama is going to be the type of program and fan base that's going to have great patience and let him cook and let him get his guys for a few years. I think it's going to be you better win 10 games in 2025.
What are they going to do with Milroe?
I think he's gonna declare. I kid you not. I think he's gonna get drafted as a quarterback.
Yeah, even though I don't think he should. But
no, I agree. But like nowadays, dude, the NFL is not above drafting bad quarterbacks.
No, in fact, my good buddy who was in town for New Year's, who's an Alabama fan, and he was actually so pissed off when Jalen Milroe threw that touchdown pass in the game. He's like, "Great, now we have to see him for the rest of the bowl game." He wanted him gone. He hated him so much. So, they may have some changes there, but it's also a thing with Bama. Not only losing that many games, but losing to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma in the same regular season. It'd been one thing if you lost to Georgia, LSU, Texas or whatever. Those are close losses, but losing to 2 teams that aren't good, or at least the 6-6 or below, just can't have it. Just can't.
Well, dude, think about this. They against Georgia, who they beat. They blew a 34-0 lead or whatever it was. Like imagine if they had actually lost that game and they finished 8-5 or whatever. Like you'd be looking back and you'd be like it would be really, his seat would be extremely hot right about now.
No, that's true. That's true. The other game we got to talk about, because there's a little bit of an Arkansas connection in this one. South Carolina and Illinois.
Gosh, man.
Dude, Illinois wins the Fighting Brett Bielema's 21-17 over South Carolina. And that gives Illinois a 10-3 season, so a 10-win season for Illinois and the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. But, that really wasn't what the storyline was. I wish I could show the video, but the storyline was, if those of you hadn't seen it, that there was a player that was injured on the South Carolina sidelines. That was an Illinois player out there. Bielema goes out there and walks over, and, they're working on him, and there's a huddle over there of South Carolina players. And as Bielema's walking back, he starts taunting and gesturing towards Shane Beamer in South Carolina, to which Shane Beamer loses his ever-loving mind. He has about 18 get-back guys, trying to hold him back, and he's just losing his cool and everything. And I was like, what in the world? And, of course, Bert's over there just smiling, grinning ear to ear, because that's what he does. But as far as what came out from it and the post-game press conference, Shane Beamer was asked about the incident. He goes, "It's heated and competitive out there, but in all my years around football, I've never seen an opposing head coach come to the opposing team sideline and basically make a gesture toward the opposing head coach." He also called it Bush League, is what he said. But yeah, it was weird because from also what I understand, it had to do with a signal that was made on a fair catch. And I don't know, it was just really funny to see a coach like Beamer go after Bielema and be so heated in the moment of a bowl game like that.
Bielema was in his head. He was playing mind games, and it worked, and Beamer lost his cool, and Illinois won the game. That's the way I choose to look at it. That was insane. I had the volume turned down when I was watching that live, and I just happened to look at the television and see Beamer just losing it, man. And I was wondering the whole time, like, what if his get-back guy just let him go? Like, what would Beamer have actually done? Because he was fighting mad. Like, what was he going to do? Just like run over there and get into a cage match with Bielema? No. So it's just, that was crazy, man. He was fired up. And I know he's had a temper. I remember when he was so ticked off, maybe it was 2 years ago, like when the band or the cheerleaders or something didn't get off the field quick enough. And so he was throwing a fit about that on the sidelines, but he looked like he was fighting mad for a dude that was never going to fight. So I don't know, man.
Shane Beamer is the most performative crybaby. Like, he does this a lot. I mean, because I remember that it was like they had between quarters, like between the first and second quarter, they had someone out there on the field, and like they couldn't start play until they fully left the field, and he was like freaking out. And I'm like, dude, between quarters, you can't do the hurry up offense thing. Like, it doesn't work like that. You can't try and get set and snap the ball before the defense gets out there. It doesn't really work that way. But he loves doing this, and that's a great point in that he pays those get back guys a lot of money to get him back, to make sure that he doesn't run out there and actually have to do anything. Which, by the way, I'm not shaming him for not wanting to actually fight, but don't act like you want to fight.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think it's cool that I think it'd be weird if he did actually go out there and try and fight him, but don't try and make it look like you're actually going to try and fight. Muss, as much as I love Muss, he was big on that. Big on the like, oh, I'm going to fight you if my guy doesn't hold me back. And it's like, dude, there's no way in hell you're about to go swing. Like, there's just no way. Not that like Bielema's like he's a big guy. I'm sure, with after a few drinks, it could be a decent fight. But Bielema, like, I don't think Shane Beamer was going to like manhandle him. But you know how hard it is to be on a field with Brett Bielema, and you come and Brett Bielema comes across looking really cool, and you look like an idiot like that. That speaks volumes. And good for Illinois. They got the big win. Great season for Brett Bielema and the boys. Like, you just got to tip your hat. Obviously, it's the Big Ten, and they didn't face like. I'm sure there's going to be some people that were like, well, if they faced Arkansas' schedule, they would. Yeah, of course, they'd be worse. But, like, you play the teams that you play. They went out there and beat South Carolina, who, by the way, finished the year as one of those teams that people were like, hey, maybe they should be in the playoff. They were as hot as anyone. They beat Clemson in their last game. That's an impressive bowl win. That's one of the more impressive bowl wins of the year, if you ask me. By the way, you know who is Illinois' assistant defensive backs coach? Kevin Richardson, former Hog.
How about that?
They've also got Grant Morgan running around over there. So maybe Arkansas needs to go poach some of those coaching staffs. But, credit to Bielema and the guys. Like, really, I don't have too much animosity towards Brett Bielema. I thought Arkansas rightly fired him. Like, I'm not going to try and recreate history like some people have done. But it's good to see him get his coaching career back on track.
Maybe Illinois was the team that should have made the playoff.
Maybe so.
Maybe. Let's expand the sucker to 24.
Yeah. Remember when he got involved with the whole Lane Kiffin thing?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good
Brett today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
right
Ole Miss loses, Bielema should absolutely recycle those tweets and be like, maybe I wasn't that crazy after all, huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
And he probably does, honestly. But yeah, Bielema's response to what was going on, because he was doing the T-bar sign. It had nothing to do with the substitution. It was used on kickoffs to let them know the team that the ball will not be returned. But Bielema said, he thought I did it at him. I did it at the whole damn sideline. I wasn't doing anything personally to him. I just wanted them to understand that I know what just happened. There's nothing illegal. I just never seen it done on any football level, college or pro. People also came out and said that Bielema should have been penalized, is what the officiating group, which, I mean, who cares? But still, it was just funny to see. And for Bielema to be kind of on the winning side of that, it's a weird deal, because that dude always made himself look like a moron in some of the stuff he said about, player safety and whatnot. So, yeah.
I mean, Bielema also, he's king of the like doing something to try and be a troll and start shit, and then being like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything like that. He literally did a horns down sign at a press conference with Charlie Strong, and then was like, I don't know, it's just like a weird like twitch of my hand. Maybe it was edited. I don't know. Like tried to downplay like he didn't do it. But honestly, funny guy. Love that.
Yeah. Well, also speaking of the humor, it was pretty funny because he went on Twitter, Bielema did, to respond to something that Shane Beamer put out, because somebody tweeted at Shane Beamer, says, no excuses for our performance, but this coward manner of play needs to be addressed and punished. Share and expose this to everyone who can. Something needs to be done. And to which Shane Beamer quote tweets and says, thanks, Mr. Kilgore. You're right. Credit to Illinois. They played well and won the game. Just disappointed that our team and I got called unethical in a press conference for something we illegally did on special teams. I don't take that likely. Unethical looks like this, along with our running back getting his helmet ripped off at the same time, along with Illinois player taunting him and then tossing the ball at the umpire's leg, who does nothing. This one is over. On to 2025. Happy New Year. Brett Bielema just literally quotes that exact tweet and goes, Happy New Year and congrats on a great season. Hashtag Happy New Year 2025. Hashtag college football playoff.
Love it.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of, okay, cool, hook 'em.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Very much similar. Very much similar to that. It was funny because somebody had some comments about it, like Matrino Durrell was like, look, Beamer looked like must out there.
100%.
Yeah, a little bit.
Fact. Yes.
Yeah. And then also Big A says, remind me of when Missouri coach went after Mike Anderson. Yeah. Can't forget that. And, but here's the deal is that for that particular thing, Anderson didn't do anything. Like there wasn't any unethical. It was just literally Anderson was the former coach of Missouri, and it was a hostile environment. So he was just trying to get points with the crowd and with the team. So, but here's the deal. It's like, Shane Beamer, Brett Bielema, if they would have gotten in a fight, everyone's like, oh, who would have won? if those two guys would have gotten a fight, Mike Anderson would have ended him. That was one fight between coaches I would have had a lot of money on and won a lot of good money for it. So, but yeah, some other scores real quick, Curse, because I know you're about to roll out of here in a second. But from the SEC, LSU puts it to Baylor, wins 44-31. So they finished their season 9-4 in the Kinders Texas Bowl. Missouri also got a victory over Iowa. It's another 10-win season for the Tigers, 27-24 in the Trans Perfect Music City Bowl. So that's unfortunate. And also, I guess we didn't really get to talk, or maybe we did get to talk about it, but I wanted to bring it up again because it was funny. I still can't believe Texas A&M lost that game to USC in the manner that they did, and that was really funny. Going back to it, but yeah, that was a rough look for everybody involved for that one. So you got, let's see, Ole Miss and Duke play it tonight at 7 p.m. in the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, and then after that, the SEC is pretty much done with the bowl games, except for I think there was one more.
So for Texas is our last hope.
Georgia,
I guess.
In Georgia, yeah. So Georgia, Notre Dame. So there you have it. There's the slate of bowl games and everything that's going along with it. So, but yeah, we'll see. Well, Curtis,
fellas,
Curtis, any final thoughts?
I plan to come back if this thing lasts from 1 to 1:30 when our show ends. Kenny Payne they found something that tugged at his heartstrings to get him going, man. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I plan to be back here in about 15 minutes, where I will give you the non-update on the status of John L. Davis and Jonas Adu's sickness. So
beautiful.
Absolutely.
That's all I got for you. But anyway, I'll see y'all boys in a few minutes.
All right, we'll see you, man.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate it. And then we'll get back with Curtis here in a bit and see what he has to say on everything too, as I get that right. But so, Andrew, it's just us for our Arkansas update, presented by Davis and Garrett Insurance, your independent auto owners insurance agency, securing what matters the most. And we'll get the chance to hear from that from basketball side of things. But other than Deron Wilson reportedly leaving, Arkansas has kind of been quiet right now with the portal. I know there's been some talk on what's going to be the next step for them and what direction that they're going to go, but as of right now, player personnel transfer portal wise, it's kind of quiet at this point.
It is kind of quiet. And, they've got some guys on campus. Curtis mentioned the Auburn safety that is in there today. I got to be honest, and I know the chat's not going to like this, or the pumpers aren't going to like this. It doesn't appear as though there's like any game changers left in the portal that Arkansas. They might get a receiver. That Eastern Michigan kid is probably the best of the bunch. There's like a D2 kid that they have on campus, but in terms of the guys that they have coming on this weekend, and they do have a nice little crew of visitors. It's guys that fit the description that we've been saying before, like either guys that didn't play at all at big schools or played a little bit at lower levels of football. And so for anybody that's kind of holding out hope that Arkansas is going to sneak in here at the last second and get a bunch of huge, big name portal pickups that move the needle, it doesn't appear that's going to happen. There will likely be a few more moves. They've got a few more spots to work with. And so we will gladly cover them when they sign, and we will read you their stats and be like, yeah, maybe they'll help. But it doesn't seem like there's going to be like a huge influx of big name talent that comes in over the next few weeks. And we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Maybe in the spring is when you can get a few guys maybe that are on actual teams that'll leave, and maybe Arkansas can do it then. But for this current window, it is pretty quiet, and it seems like we're kind of at the end of it.
Yeah, well, I was even thinking, just based on kind of like what you were talking about, like when we sat to hear from Sam Pittman, it almost sounded like he was just waiting on the spring almost, where not to say that, we're just not going to do jack and just wait until the spring, but his focus may be a little bit look towards, hey, there's a window that's open there, and we may get some guys once we see what we have with the spring roster and get additions there, which is not to say that you can't get any players at that point, because there has been some pretty big additions that have happened for some certain teams. But yeah, I kind of feel like it's going to be this way until about March into April, and then we'll see maybe some new additions get added to the pieces there on the spring roster.
Yeah, Pittman does that a lot, where he kind of will like just push the can down the road and be like, oh yeah, we're going to have a huge portal class. He said that to us a few weeks ago. Has not materialized yet, and now he's kind of like, whoa, in the spring, we're going to crush it in the spring. He did also, by the way, I guess we should have talked about this with the Deron Wilson thing. He did go to the press conference like 2 weeks ago and was like, we're not expecting any staff changes. Like, we've got our guys. Like, everybody wants to be here. And I get it. Things change. Things evolve. Like, there's no shame. But, like, once again, like it's just another example. You can't really take what he says at press conferences at face value because it most of the time turns out to be untrue. But mentioning that spring window though, they're going to make probably, I'd say 2 to 3 more additions in the next week or so. Like from this visit weekend, you would imagine there's going to be at least 1 or 2 guys that commit. And we've spoken about this a few times that I think now that the number is getting down, because at the beginning of the portal, we were like, all right, they're going to sign 20 to 24 guys. We'll see what they can do. Well, that number is getting a lot lower now to where it's like 4 or 5 spots remaining, maybe. I think if they are waiting on that spring portal window, I hope it's like they go in with a very clear plan of like, we want 1 corner or 1 safety. Let's go out there and just push all our chips to the middle and get that 1 guy. Be a little bit more selective. See if you can get a real game changer. And by the way, I mean, we're kind of downplaying the likelihood that they land a huge class in the spring. But if you look at the last few years, they've been pretty consistent at landing someone in that period that ends up being a starter. I know Trajan Jeff Coat fits that description. Jaheim Thomas fits that description. Switzer, Dix, Larry Worth, all 3 of those guys were in that late window. And so it's not, it wouldn't be without precedent if Arkansas went out there and landed a legitimate starter in that spring window or even into the summer. And so we'll see if they can do it, but I do hope they're a little bit more selective. But in terms of the overall class, I think it kind of is what it is at this point. And I don't think it's going to take a massive jump up to where they're going to end up. And we'll see where they rank. I mean, currently on 24/7, I believe they were still in the top 15 for now, just based on the quantity. We'll see where they end up. But I think if there are people that are holding out for like a big, for them to take a huge step forward, I don't know if that's necessarily coming. I think we kind of see what the portal class is at this point.
Yeah. And, I mean, we'll always have any updates that do change, but I say I'll be surprised and watch like 2 or 3 happen after we get done with today on the show. Just pop. That's just the way it is. But shout out to Nathan Davis. Just says has nothing to say, but wanted to give us a super chat. We appreciate
I
you,
like
Nathan.
that he clarified. It'd be one, because a lot of times we have the people that don't say anything, like don't have any chat at all. I like that he clarified. He's like, I don't have anything to say. Just want to donate. And we appreciate you, Nathan.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate all that coming in. And Kingsley was asking, there's like, wait, where's Curtis going? Curtis has to do the press conference at 1:00 today with Kenny Payne. So we'll hopefully have a chance to hear from him again before the show is over. But yes, that's where he's going. He's not just taking off and saying see you later. He'll be back. He'll be back in a little bit. But speaking of, I wanted to do this as far as our Alumni Hall question of the day, presented by Alumni Hall, where you can get all the greatest Razorback apparel. Say like even for baseball season, this little baseball jersey I'm wearing, got it from Alumni Hall. So with Razorback basketball going on, with baseball going to be around the corner, you want to get the latest and greatest stuff. You can do it all with Alumni Hall there in Fayetteville at 3417 North College Avenue. You can also shop them online at alumnihall.com. It's the ultimate Razorback shopping experience. I was just curious with basketball season, of course, with the SEC slate starting up this Saturday against Tennessee on the road. And we'll get Curtis's thoughts on this too, if and when he comes back. But it's simple with the SEC, knowing what it is now and what we've seen so far this year in the non-conference slate. The SEC is the best conference, bar none, not even close. So for Arkansas, knowing the schedule, knowing who they're playing, knowing how good the league is, will they have an SEC winning record this year? With the choices being yes, no, or they're going to break even with 18 games. But Andrew, do you believe that they get to the winning season in the SEC?
I think they do. And I do say that, and that may sound like an obvious thing to some fans where it's like, of course they'll be over 500. But like you mentioned, the SEC's the best basketball in the country. And it's really not even that close right now. And you just look at some of the teams, it's hard. Like anybody who goes 10-8 in the SEC this year or better, that's a really good team. Like that's a for sure tournament team. That is a really good team not to be trifled with. Hell, there's going to be some teams that go 9-9 or below that maybe go 8-10 that are also teams that you shouldn't mess with. But I was looking at the schedule. So obviously they open up with Tennessee on the road, which is as tough of a game as you can imagine. And so you probably they're not favored in that game. They're not going to be. You can even if you chalk that up as an L. I'm just looking through the schedule and I'm trying to think of games that would fit that type of description where you just shouldn't go into it expecting Arkansas to win. There's really not that many. Obviously you go at Auburn February 19th. That would fit that description. I don't think anybody should be chalking that up as a win. At Texas February 5th, that's a tough one. Although Texas hasn't looked great. At Kentucky February 1st, that maybe fits that description. Although obviously we're going to hope Arkansas wins and the fans will be very fired up for that one. Maybe at A&M, but really looking at the rest of the schedule, there's not many games like that where you're like, okay, Arkansas might not have a chance to win it. Like they're going to have a chance to win a lot of these games, and they play some of the top teams once. Like they only play Auburn once, they only play Tennessee once. They play Texas twice, but again, Texas hasn't looked that great so far. And so, yeah, I think like we'll know after these first 3 games, if they're 0-3 after the Ole Miss, Florida, Tennessee stretch, it's going to be tough to see them being 500. But if they can go ahead and pick up some quality wins against Florida and Ole Miss here to start, I see no reason why they can't get to 10 games. And I believe Curtis actually projected them to go 11-7 the other day. So I'm sure he agrees.
Well, 72% of the Razorback audience says yes, they will have a winning record in SEC play. 18% say a 500 record, and then only 10% say that they're going to go less than 500. But yeah, when I was looking at the schedule, that's what really stood out to me was fascinating is obviously there's a lot of teams that are ranked in the top 25 in the SEC right now. But at least, unless I'm looking at it the wrong way, which we know the schedule can change and teams will get into the top 25, out of the top 25, whatever it is. But there's not a single team on the Razorback basketball schedule where a team that is ranked in the SEC right now that Arkansas plays twice. Not one single one. They play, you mentioned it, Tennessee once, Ole Miss once, Florida once, Oklahoma once, Kentucky once, Bama once, A&M once, Auburn once, Mississippi State once. So every team that's on the schedule in top 25, they play only once. And then the teams that they end up playing twice, teams like Missouri, Texas, which, you know, like you mentioned, Texas is decent, and then LSU. Those are the only 3 teams they play twice. So it actually could, as crazy as it is, even though most of your toughest games are on the road, but shoot, if you just won all your home games, which I don't think is too crazy of an idea, but even just won that and, you know, or at least maybe just slipped up once and then win 3 SEC road games, you're in business pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it mentioned in the home schedule, I mean, the importance of home road is like, obviously everyone knows that's a big deal, but for Arkansas basketball in particular, like about as big of a deal as it could be. Like you mentioned, some of the like Ole Miss, you play them once, but you play them at home. And so it's like Arkansas will most likely be favored in that game. They'll most likely be favored against Florida. I mean, we'll see. Unless maybe they'll go suck it up against Tennessee and that'll change. Oklahoma, who we're not even sure is good, you getting them at home, like that's huge. Bama's going to be tough. I mean, Bama's always going to be tough, and that's going to be a big game. Arkansas hasn't fared super well against Bama here lately, obviously under Nate Oates. But yeah, getting them at home February 8th, and that's exactly a week after the Kentucky game. I believe that's a Saturday. So like that's going to be in a freaking electric Bud Walton Arena atmosphere. And so, I mean, like, look, a lot of these games, obviously they're all tough and it's not going to be easy. Like there really aren't many games, even the Missouri games, like not going to be easy. But you just look at it and like, I think Arkansas is going to be favored in a good bit of these. And we're focusing a lot on the schedule aspect of it, which is fair because that's just kind of what you do. But I also do just like when I'm watching this team, I do feel like they're getting close to gelling as a unit. Would love to see Nelly Davis get healthy, but I also just feel like Arkansas's peak. I mean, they haven't peaked it by any means yet, but it feels like they're kind of on track to peak at the right times. Where I don't feel like there's been a lot of years over the last 4 or 5 where going into conference play, I didn't feel as confident as we do right about now. I mean, even some of those really good must teams stunk over Christmas break, and we were like, oh man, and they started poorly in SEC play a lot of those years. And so I think if Arkansas, regardless of what happens Saturday, you get a couple chances against Florida and Ole Miss to start off. Those are 2 real notable marquee wins that you could pick up at home where you might be favored to do so. I think it sets up for Arkansas to start off pretty strong in SEC play if they can get through that first 3-game stretch.
Yeah, that's going to be the key for them. In fact, I was looking it up, Andrew. Could you name the last time that Arkansas started in their first 3 games 2-1 in SEC play to start conference play?
I'm trying to think. Is it the Portis Qualls team? Is it that far ago?
It was actually, I had it pulled up here, but now I feel like I lost it. But it was actually, let's see, this one right here. Nope, actually it wasn't that one. Yeah, but I believe it was the Portis. It was either the Portis Qualls one or the next year. So it's been almost 7-8 seasons essentially since you've had a 2-1 start in conference play. And to be honest, it probably doesn't look very likely this year either, considering you play at Tennessee and then Ole Miss and Florida at home right after that. I mean, again, you could win both home games, but it just doesn't feel like you're very confident that's if you go, I think 1 and 2 might be the more likely scenario right now. But again, they're, like you said, they're capable of doing it and beating anybody at any point. So, okay. So yeah, it was the 2015-2016 season.
So that is the year after, right?
Yeah.
That's weird because that team sucked.
Exactly. They started off the year at Texas A&M, got blown out. Then they beat Vanderbilt in overtime, 90-85 at home, and then they beat Mississippi State at home, 82-68. So
Wow.
and then they beat Missouri on the road. So they technically started 3-1 in SEC play that year and finished 9-9 in conference play. So yeah,
That was the year they had like Dusty Hannahs, Anthlon Bell. I'm
Willie
trying to think of
Kawasi.
who else. Yeah, like it was a very weird team. It was a transition year. That was back in the day where rebuilding years were just a normal thing that people kind of expected. That's just how programs work. Now it's like, championship or bust every year, and there's no excuse. But yeah, that was like a classic Mike Anderson team where, the talent level was a little bit different. We'll just say that. But how funny is it that like not one of the worst, but like one of the worst teams of the Mike Anderson era, I would say, was the one that started 3-1 in SEC play, just like the one team that beat 2 top 10 teams in back-to-back weeks or whatever back in the day, went 2 and whatever in SEC play. It's weird. Arkansas basketball it's a mystery.
It's strange. Yeah. Cause that was also, it was basically that team was Anthlon Bell, Dusty Hannahs, Moses Kingsley, and then a pretty solid Jabril Durham. And then that was it. I mean, nobody else was really, because I mean, Keith Miles was like starting on that team at times. So yeah, it was just a weird time, but it's been that long. And so for Arkansas to do that, it would be really tough. But this comment I think you highlighted from Camo Hog says, if we go 3-0 in the first 3 conference games, how much Kool-Aid will we be consuming? Oh, dude, if they go 3-0 to start conference play, Arkansas is going to jump up first off, probably being close to a top 10 team, if not a top 10 team immediately. And then there'll also be people saying this team could win a national championship. Just saying.
I was gonna say it's going to be insane. Like it really would. I would even argue they might even be as high as top 5. Because you would think about it, you'd beat the number 1 team on the road. That alone, like Arkansas on Monday would be ranked probably in the top 15. Because where are they at right now? 23 still?
Yep, 23.
If you go out there and beat number 1 on the road, you're 12-2. I think that would get you a nice little bump there. Then you beat 2 more top 25 teams at home. I think top 10 would be easy. But yeah, we would definitely be we'd be sunshine pumping like crazy on this show, and Curtis would be loving it. And I think Arkansas fans also, that would ramp up the shit talk between Arkansas and Kentucky. Like they would really, because Arkansas fans would really be pointing, who knows what Kentucky will end up doing, but that would give Arkansas fans a lot of ammo to be pumping their chest in the streets.
Yep. The only thing about it is with Florida, like the team that Arkansas plays third game, Florida's opening 2 games at Kentucky and then Tennessee at home. So, they to say that they would still be undefeated at that point would be insane. But say if they did win both those games, then yes, for sure, that would be monstrous. And then Ole Miss actually opens up their conference play against Georgia. So you'd think at home. Yeah. So you think that they would take care of business in that one. But yeah, there would be a lot of that pump and sunshine flowing and getting hyped up and crazy excited, especially just beating Tennessee on the road. My goodness, just that game alone is going to start really, because we all know that whatever Cal does is under a microscope, good or bad. Like when they went and beat Michigan up there in New York, everyone was talking about that game. Everybody on national media and everything. So if Arkansas goes to Tennessee and wins that one, it's definitely going to be talked about and ad nauseum like crazy.
Yeah, it's a good point that like the national ripple it would have. Because that Michigan game definitely felt like a big deal. And that was in MSG, so maybe that's a little bit of it. But yeah, if Coach Calipari beat the number 1 team on the road, hell, I mean, how many times did that happen in the history of Arkansas basketball? I'm sure nobody knows the answer, but it's like hogstats.com probably has it. But like, how many times do you go on the road and beat the number 1 team? I can't imagine that's happened more than once or twice, maybe 3 or 4 times. I mean, hell, beating the number 1 team period is hard enough. I mean, Arkansas beat Auburn a few years ago, and that was awesome. But think about how big of a deal it was when they won at home. So you think about Coach Calipari, if he starts 3-0, hell, I'll even say if Arkansas is 2-1, I'll even give them a loss at Tennessee. But if they beat Florida and beat Ole Miss, I think Hawk fans should be like pretty confident in their team and pumping their chest pretty solid and feel like they're heading towards something really special.
Well, especially where, again, no game is easy, so don't misconstrue it. But if you go through 2-1 in that, you get LSU on the road, which you feel pretty good about winning. You get Missouri on the road, which you feel pretty good about winning. You get Georgia at home, which you feel pretty good about winning. So if you go out, and because you're better than all 3 of those teams, you are. So say if you just go out and show it, you're sitting at 5-1 when you welcome Oklahoma to town, he's number 12 right now. But that's a home game, and then after that, you go to Kentucky, which we all know is going to be a big one, a huge one, if not the biggest game that could be. I don't even know if it could. I think it will be the most watched regular season college basketball game this year. It has to be. It has to be when the ratings come out.
I would imagine. I have no idea what else is on TV that day. It is a Saturday, right?
It is a Saturday.
And
Saturday
maybe you'll
night on
have-
ESPN.
But you won't. But I'm trying to think because the NFL, you'll have the Super Bowl on Sunday. Like it won't be competing with really anything else. Probably, I could definitely see that. I mean, also we'll see what Kentucky does. But yeah, if that scenario plays out where you have an Arkansas team that's by that point, if they're winning at that rate, even if they lose to Tennessee, they'll be a top 10 to 15 team in that range as well. So if Kentucky is holding serve and is able to actually, stick around with the big boys up top, we'll see. I mean, I have my doubts. I think Kentucky might be ready to get exposed here in SEC play a little bit. But if Kentucky is playing well, oh man, it's gonna be awesome. I can't wait for us to be there. But yeah, I think like just the intensity of a top 15 matchup, Coach Cal, Arkansas in Rupp, like it's gonna be like storybook type of stuff.
Oh yeah. In fact, that day there are some actually good SEC games that day. Tennessee and Florida play each other that day in Knoxville. You also have Auburn and Ole Miss, which that game's in Oxford, so that could be potentially a really good game. And then you have actually that's Arkansas and Kentucky. So those are the big games that are going on, at least where the teams are currently ranked. But yeah, that could potentially really turn some heads and all of that. Which I was a little surprised to see Tennessee and Florida have not been mentioned on where they're going to be on TV yet, which all the other ones have. So I don't know, maybe they're just waiting out, holding out hope. But still, it's going to be fun though to see what the SEC holds. And again, I've just never seen any conference be as good as what this conference looks like right now. And so we'll see. But Tennessee, Knoxville, I can't remember the last time even Arkansas beat Tennessee in Knoxville.
We looked it up the other day. I think it was.
I remember in 2006 they did. But
yeah, and there was one more time after that. It was like not terribly long ago, but I think they're like 4-16 all time in Knoxville. So it's definitely a place that they don't typically perform pretty well in.
I don't feel like anybody would either. Like there's just something about playing there and the type of teams that they face off against, and just the little amount of times that they've won. Because I guess so it was during those dark years, I guess, of 2016, 2017, they won at Tennessee 82-78.
Yeah, that's why we all blocked it out of our memory because we just don't remember that team.
Yeah. In fact, it's kind of crazy because I forgot about this too. Arkansas had won 6 straight games against Tennessee from 2014 to 2018. So
that is great. They had that really fun game in Bud Walton with like Anton Beard, Daryl Macon, Dan Gafford, and all that.
Yeah, that one went to overtime. It was one of my favorite games because the energy was just insane. Because Gafford had that buzzer-beating dunk that he just took the dude off the 3-point line and ended up tying it because Arkansas was down big. And then in overtime, Arkansas pours it on. They're up. This one was crazy. This is random, but they were up 11 with less than a minute to go. They won by 2. So that doesn't tell you like how insane. People forget that because Tennessee hit like 3 straight threes in a row. But yeah, they were up by 11 points with under a minute to go, and they only won by 2. So
that was supposed to be an awesome Arkansas team.
Yep. Very underwhelming. Or not underwhelming as in they went to the they went to the NCAA tournament. They were, I believe, the 7 seed against Butler.
Yeah.
But still, yeah, considering the senior level talent that you had, the experienced guys, an NBA big time player in Daniel Gafford. Yeah, that team should have done a lot more than what they ended up doing. So disappointing. I feel like you could say that a lot about our different teams in Arkansas Razorback basketball history at some point. But yeah, pretty disappointing there. Curtis apparently is now hearing from Kenny Payne. And so he says that Nelly Davis is back at practice. So there's that. Or whatever.
Back at practice. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's the Nelly Davis thing is very weird because it's like he obviously had the wrist injury early, missed some time leading up to the season. And then we felt like once the season started, he was working his way back. And then now he's out again. It reminds me a little bit of the Adu thing because it was the same kind of situation with Adu where he came back perhaps prematurely. So hopefully it has the same arc as the Adu thing because Adu, although he was sick the other night, it at least seems like, okay, he's back to being healthy now. His legs are fine. Hopefully we're seeing the better ball. Because, I mean, once they sat Adu for, I guess it was a couple more weeks, once he came back, he looked a lot better. So I'm hoping we get that kind of thing with Nelly. But it is weird that this wrist injury is apparently a season changer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently so. In fact, let's just talk a little bit more about it because we got Curtis that's been joining us once again here into the stream. So, Curtis, how enlightened are you now after Kenny Payne's press conference?
I tell you what, it was like sitting in the opera, I'm just blown away. I'm just moved by everything he said. No, I text you guys. Kenny Payne, he is like a politician. He's well versed in what he can and can't say up there. But I thought he gave some pretty good insight. Everybody wants to know about the injury stuff. And he was a little bit more forthcoming than these guys have been throughout most of the year. He talked about Jonas Adu and said he's feeling better. He's obviously sick the other day. That he's been coming around the last couple of days. So that's good, a positive development. He did speak to John L. Davis and said he has been back at practice, working really hard, and that right now it's just about kind of finding his rhythm and everything. So that kind of tracks with what they were saying before the Oakland game, which was they were hopeful and kind of expecting to have him back for Tennessee. And hopefully that's the case. I mean, it's just been a weird deal there, but if he's back at practice, that's a pretty good sign. So from that standpoint, I mean, I don't know, knock on wood or whatever. Hopefully Arkansas will be healthy for a game, for a change. That would be cool. But it was pretty good. I mean, obviously really spoke highly about Tennessee. They're good. He mentioned the importance of these guys being physical and matching Tennessee's physicality. We know that's pretty much what they're all about. Talked about the freshmen not getting overwhelmed by the moment. It's the first time they're going to be playing in front of 20,000 folks who hate them, and it's the number one team in the country. So it's like baptism by fire. But it was good. One thing that I think what I liked the most about what he said was probably he's kind of asked about Big Z, and he said Z's been a guy who, he's been dealing with that ankle injury, but he's been sick too. So I think it's probably worked its way throughout the course of the team at this point. But he was really open and upfront about his importance. And it's true. I think Arkansas really, really needs him to kind of figure it out. And he was just open about it. He said, hey, we need his offense. Like he's such a unique player. His ability to stretch the floor at that position, it just gives Arkansas a completely different dynamic than what they have with Adu at center. And when you're at your best, you're complementing each other in that way. And he's been damn near unplayable the last few games. And so they've been trying to instill some more confidence in him and get him going. And I think he's going to be a key in this game against Tennessee, who has the number one 3-point defense in the country. And a lot of it is because their guards are so good about running people off the line. The way to counteract that and soften them up a little bit is if you have a big man who can knock down some shots from the perimeter. So if he can give Arkansas a couple threes, that'd be big for him.
Good deal. Yeah. Cause I saw the tweet that you had with the Nelly Davis update and everything when he said he's back at practice. I'm like, well, it's like me and Andrew were talking about. I was like, well, he's back at practice. He's there. He is present, but going up against Tennessee, they're going to need everybody that they can get out there and all hands on deck. So I'm excited about it.
I am too. Sorry, I was uploading the press conference. The whole press conference is on our YouTube channel at Inside Arkansas if you guys want to check that out. But for sure, man, they need to be healthy. It's just been a shame with this team. It's something else that he kind of mentioned, and it's true from the standpoint of, you have plans coming into the season, and there's certain things you want guys to work on, certain combinations that you want to have. But when it's just, you can never even practice together because these guys have been sick or ankle rolled here or wrist hurting there. It just kind of hampers the development a little bit. But it seems like they are getting a little bit more comfortable and finding an identity of who they are, which is what you need, going into this gauntlet that is the SEC. He mentioned things like wanting the opponent to have to adjust to them. Like they don't want to dictate their lineups based on what other teams look like. And that includes the number one team in the country. Like Tennessee is going to start two guys over 6'10" in the front court. And so it was kind of like, oh, well, Trevin's been playing pretty well. Do you want to pair him with Adu? And Kenny Payne was basically like, hell no, we got to do Thero. We want people to have to adjust to him. And I think that's a good thing. That's signs of a good team when you're not really worried about what other teams are putting out there. It's about making them adjust to what you're trying to do. And that tells me that they're getting a little bit more comfortable with what they have, which I don't think was the case, a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. The sounds based on just the, secondhand report from Kenny Payne, who I'm sure was pretty coy about the Nelly injury thing, and basically your interpretation of it. It sounds to me like there's a chance Nelly plays, but like in a minutes restriction type of thing tomorrow. Would you say that's fair?
No, I mean, I would normally say yes, but they've been so weird about it. With some of these guys, I think with it being a wrist, I feel like if he's healthy enough to play, that they're going to play him 30 minutes. I really do. Now, Carter Knox has really been coming along. I don't know if he's come along enough just yet to where I'm thinking, yeah, you know what? They'll be fine. Start him, play him 25 minutes on the road at Tennessee. So if Nelly's out there, even when he was hurt early in the year and he wasn't getting that many shots up, and you could just tell offensively he wasn't in a great rhythm. He does a lot of really good things defensively. He's a veteran. He's been in games like this before. He can rebound at his position. I have a feeling that if he's available, they're going to play the heck out of him. Now, whether he's good or not, I don't know, because it's been a while, right? But if it was like a foot like Adu or something, I would 100% believe that. I just have a feeling, given the position and the circumstance, if he's cleared, the dude's going to play a bunch.
Yeah, when we are talking about a 6'4" guy with a wrist injury, it's not like a big man with an ankle or whatever. But sure. I did wonder, because I know a lot of fans have kind of been doing the whole, should Nelly come off the bench? Is that what should happen? I wondered if this game was maybe their chance to, and I agree on the Carter Knox front, where it's like, I don't necessarily want to play him 30 minutes in this game if I don't have to. But I wondered if this game might be their chance to kind of experiment with that and have Carter start, have Nelly come off the bench and be that spark plug. And then if Nelly has it, yeah, you can just play him 30 minutes or whatever. But I wondered if they might maybe try and experiment with this particular game with Nelly's situation.
And they might. I guess it depends on how long he's been back at practice and how much they've been able to get out of him, because they might want to keep that lineup continuity. I'd be cool with that, because you know, like one of two things will happen for Carter. Like he would either sink or swim out of the gates. If he comes out and, knocks down a couple threes right away and he's pounding his chest, and silencing the crowd at Tennessee, then it's like, okay, he's growing up. He's ready for this moment. And then you can mix John L in and be a little bit more strategic about how you do it. If he comes out there and he kicks a ball out of bounds and gets lost defensively and gives up a backdoor dunk, then, you get him out of there and you just get whatever you can out of Nelly. So I would almost rather them do that, to your point, Andrew, as opposed to having Nelly out there. And then, like they're probably going to go to Trevin off the bench first and try to do some rotation in their front court a little bit. And then it might be the 11-minute mark before you even get Carter in there. Then you're already in the flow of the game. Sometimes I think why these guys get short hooks. If you're playing well or something, a guy comes in, there's a 4-0 run, he makes one mistake, you take him out, you don't see him the rest of the game. Start him, play him through the first media timeout, see what he can do, and then take it from there.
Well, I tell you what, since we got about a little less than 10 minutes here, I was curious because if you go to the Bet Saracen app, all the NFL games, college playoff games, bowl games, everything, folks, #1 sports betting app for a reason, and here in the state of Arkansas, so you can download it on your iPhone or Android or check it out at betsaracen.com. They haven't come out with lines just yet for Arkansas, Tennessee, which is not unheard of, because a lot of times in basketball, you wait until the last minute. But knowing what you know and everything, I'm just curious, what do you think that the line will open up as in this particular game with Arkansas and Tennessee?
Well, I've already looked at KenPom, and a lot of places have this as like 12. It's not going to be that much. I really don't think it's going to be that much, but I would say probably 6.5, 7.5, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. I was thinking kind of in that range. And I also don't know if Nelly Davis's injury changes the line that much. Obviously he's a important player, important piece, but I don't think the books are sitting there waiting on Kenny Payne's press conference. They're like, well, we're going to move it 3 points based on this, especially given what his role's been. But yeah, I think Tennessee by 7 sounds about right.
Yeah. I was thinking 8.5. I don't know why that was the first number that popped in my head. But if it is Tennessee 8.5, I'm probably betting on Arkansas. I don't know. I feel like it's going to be one of those games that Arkansas struggles in the first half, doesn't look great, and then second half comes around and they start chipping away. I'm not going to pick Arkansas to win necessarily, but I think that'll be a close game. At least I'm hoping so, because that'll be really a boner if it ends up just going 28 points or something crazy like that. I don't want
back-to-back boners. Have we gotten back-to-back boner shows from John? He said boners on our show last year on December 31st, and then he dropped a boner today. How about that?
Yeah, I'm a big boner guy, apparently. So,
well, and Tennessee's such a tough place to play.
Yeah.
Congratulations on being a big boner guy, by the way. But it's Arkansas hasn't won there, I think, since 2017. They've got the longest winning streak in the country. Tennessee is not the best team in the country. I'm telling you right now, they're not. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think they're really, really good, but They do strike me as a team that's gettable. They're not going to go undefeated this year. I don't know if Arkansas is going to go into their house and get them, but they're going to got a number of times in league play. And I do think that this is probably one of those games early in SEC play where you've got one team that's probably not getting quite enough credit for how good they are, and another that might be just a little bit inflated. I think that's what we're going to see here. So I'm with you. Whatever it is, I'll probably have Arkansas to cover. I think they've got a chance to win this game. Calipari wins this game a lot. This is going to be the 26th time that him and Rick Barnes have faced each other. Barnes leads it 13-12, the series. Last year, that young Kentucky team went in there and beat Tennessee in the final game of the regular season on the road. So crazier things has happened. Cal usually has his guys ready to play in games like this.
Yeah, man, that Kentucky team last year, by the way, with Cal, that obviously ended up losing to Oakland, but like they were playing so well in that month of like February and March, dude. They were nasty for a while there. But to your point, John, about betting on Arkansas on the spread, you know, I always hate when it's like a spread that's like 4.5. I hate betting on the underdog because I'm like, you're just, even if you have it a close game and you're down by 3, you're probably fouling, and then you play that weird game. But if it gets up there in that 8.5, 9 range, now all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I could really see that, especially because I'm kind of with you where I'm like, I don't know if I can fully say Arkansas is going to win, but I do think they will keep it close. I don't think Arkansas is about to just get like run off the floor. I would be very, very surprised if Arkansas just like didn't play a competitive game in this matchup with or without Nelly Davis, even if he didn't play at all. And so, yeah, I think that if it gets up, if that spread really is anywhere near double digits, I'll have a hard time not being tempted by the Arkansas spread.
Yeah. Well, also just you brought that game or the Kentucky team last year. I don't know. It just made me think, can we just remember the fact that Arkansas and Kentucky played twice? Arkansas lost once, but in one of them being the lowest scoring game of all time and the other one being the highest scoring game of all time. Like that was just still one of the most incredible things. They won in Bud Walton 63-57, and then in Lexington, in regulation, mind you, 111-102. Just so stupid, man.
That Kentucky team. I saw somebody in the chat say something earlier today about like Calipari should get an offensive guru or whatever on his staff, which is funny because he had one last year. They figured something out there during SEC play where they just started scoring triple digits like nobody's business. So, yeah, it is kind of crazy that Arkansas held them to 57 at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the way, Curtis, just we were talking about while you were gone because somebody asked in the chat, but how much Kool-Aid you going to be drinking if Arkansas starts 3-0 in SEC play?
Unlimited Kool-Aid. Who wouldn't? I mean, my God, if they do that, they should jump all the way in the top 10.
Yeah, so we were saying
exactly what we said. Oh, yeah.
I mean, my goodness, that's yeah, I hadn't even really considered that. For me, I've been like, just get out. You get out of that 2-1, you're in a really good spot. Yeah, I mean, you get a road win at Tennessee, and then you go back to back with Ole Miss, and then undefeated top 10 Florida. Can't tell me nothing.
Well, I even say 2-1, frankly, like if I say Arkansas loses by 7 or 8 at Tennessee, like it just goes how it's technically supposed to go. Then if you win both of those home games, I still think Arkansas fans should be getting a nice full solid glass, maybe not a gallon, but a full-on glass of Kool-Aid where clearly you're headed in the right direction. That would be 2 very marquee wins. Like I'd feel pretty good if they went 2-1 here.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I just got a few minutes left here, folks, before we close up shop. I do want to bring this up. We were talking about the targeting or lack thereof call way back when between Texas and Arizona State. Well, there's been a statement made by the Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark, where he says, I am incredibly proud of how Arizona State represented the Big 12 in the college football playoff quarterfinals. While the outcome didn't go our way, the Sun Devils proved that they are one of the most talented teams in college football this season. As a member of the College Football Playoff Management Committee, I've had multiple discussions seeking clarity surrounding the targeting call in Arizona State's final drive of the fourth quarter with Richard Clark. Moving forward, we need to address college football playoff officiating to ensure national standards are developed. These standards should be crucial to the college football playoff's future, and I look forward to discussing them with my fellow committee members and where we meet next week. So, whatever.
Okay.
I mean, what's that? What are you going to do? Like, sure. And that's what I laugh about. He's like, college football playoffs should be able to stand. I'm like, well, how about like just college football across the board? Like, why does it have to be just the playoffs? Shouldn't it not be all the time? But I guess I see what he's saying. Because he felt like his team's Big 12 should have won, and he's protecting his brand, his conference. I get it, but there's nothing going to happen. Nothing's going to change. So
He handled that a little bit better than was it Utah's AD after the BYU game that went up to the
God, he
podium?
went crazy. He was like, "I'm about to resign if y'all don't give us a win." I was like, "Well,
we're
relax."
leaving the Big 12. We thought this was a good idea to come here. It wasn't.
Yeah, that was nuts. By the way, speaking of Big 12 and sportsmanship, did y'all see Dion congratulated Cade Dillingham, and he was like, "Hey, y'all represented the Big 12 proudly."
Yep. That's pretty big time. I mean, he doesn't seem like not saying he doesn't compliment people, but to get that from Dion means a little bit of something.
Mhm.
Also, a few other things. A shout out to Frank Ragnow for another Pro Bowl appearance. His fourth one.
Where's the Pro Bowl at this year? Do we know? It bounces around now, which I used to always be Hawaii. Now it bounces around. You can go to like the Pro Bowl in Charlotte.
It becomes like a bowl game. It's actually a good question. Let's see.
I don't know.
I'd have to look it up. I feel like it should be just in Vegas all the time.
Hey, Frank Ragnow, by the way. Now I don't want to. I'm gonna knock on wood here. I know he's had some injuries here and there, but like he's shaping up to be like a borderline Hall of Famer.
I mean, yeah,
especially if he might get a Super Bowl this year. That'd be he's racked up a few Pro Bowls. I think he made All Pro at least once or twice. And All Pros, I mean, there's literally only two that make your position. Frank Ragnow, future Holly.
Yeah, he's on pace for it at least.
Sam Pittman, add another to the tally.
Yep, add it to the list. It's in Orlando, by the way, is the Pro Bowl this year, Camping World Stadium. So
we officially have a stripe out alert on Saturday, January 11th against Florida at Bud Walton Arena.
I like that. Okay. I like that they gave them time to prepare too. It's not like, hey, tomorrow stripe out. It's like next Saturday you're going to the game. They can promote it Wednesday. It'll be good.
Yeah, they even put it out there. Get this on your radar well in advance, folks. No excuses. That's what the tweet says. Love it.
Yes, exactly. It's almost like they listen to us or something.
We've been calling for this for months where we're like, they'll do things and nobody knows it's happening. I love that. I really genuinely am happy to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this thing called working ahead that you do. And it really gets people prepared and everything. And I also like the fact that since it is a weirdly shaped, stadium or arena, as far as doing a stripe out section by section, they did a good job. Like it looks like the student section is just going to be all red. So if you're a student, just wear all red, but everywhere else has got a good striping situation going on. So that'll be good. That'll be good. Also a few other things. GM says, glad you guys are on streaming on X. That's where I get most of my content now. Yeah, we're streaming on a lot of things. X, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. Instagram, Twitch. Still trying to figure out the whole TikTok thing. It's a lot more difficult. Those dadgum Chinese people, man. I tell you, they're making everything.
Well, it's got to get banned in the United States, so maybe we shouldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. May get in trouble if that was the case. But also, SET was like, "Hey, college Gafford or current TB?"
I love Trevin Brazil. I really do.
Is this
asking this question means we don't remember how freaking good Daniel Gafford was in college. That dude was a game changer.
Yeah, I don't understand why that even the question. I mean, for crying out loud, the next year when they were a bad basketball team and made it to the NIT, like he was still going for crazy numbers. Like still he's the fastest, like up and down the court big man I've ever seen. Like that dude at 6'10" glided down the court.
Especially considering how he fell down under the basket every possession. Still got up and was beating people down the floor.
That's what he does, man.
His motor, you want to talk about unlimited motor, but dude, imagine Dan Gafford and a Duke Thero on the same court. Like, good Lord, that's just a lot of athleticism, like a lot of just physical, like imposing figures down there. I think Daniel Gafford, dude, if this team had Daniel Gafford, they'd be the number one team in the country.
Mm-hmm. Well,
probably so.
I would also throw. Do you guys remember Tom Hart, a broadcaster, when he did the windmill dunk in the SEC tournament? He just lost his mind. Like
as he should have.
Yeah,
it's very impressive. In-game windmills.
Yeah, it was very impressive. So, all right, well, guys, final thoughts? Anything before we roll out of here?
I have one final thought. It's this from Camel Hogs. This is the reason we can't get any good Chinese places in Fayetteville is because John can't get the TikTok going. I agree. Something to work on.
Always connected. It's my New Year's resolution, by the way, right there, just to get more good Chinese restaurants in Fayetteville.
Mm-hmm.
My final thought is, this was a successful first show of 2025 for Inside Arkansas Live. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Very good. Happy to be here. I think we handled the Curtis press conference. I was worried if that press conference had gone 5 more minutes, I was going to be sweating bullets. I was like, dude, me and John, Well, when are we going? We're going to end up talking Star Wars at some point. We were about 4 minutes away from Star Wars talk, but it worked out pretty well. It timed out okay. And I also have to leave y'all with some self promotion. The Bombastic Podcast is cooking. I know that baseball season's a few weeks away. Some people are not going to be in that mode just yet, and that's perfectly fine. There's no shame in that. But when y'all get bored, when you need to catch up, the playlist is starting to rack up pretty good. Today, I'm about to record an episode. I'm going to dive into the topic. Does Arkansas have a Nate Thompson problem? Little teaser.
I'm sure that will not elicit any sort of emotional response from any Razorback fans.
Yeah, a lot of comments on that one.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one.
Yep, should be great. So yeah, be sure to tune into that, folks, and as well as all the content that we have going on here at Inside Arkansas. You can subscribe to us here on our YouTube page at Inside Arkansas. You can also check out our social media at Inside Arkansas, on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, everywhere. And you can also check out our website, InsideArkansas.com, for all the latest and greatest up-to-date information on all things Razorbacks. And we'll keep it going from there. So for Andrew Ellis and Curtis Wilkerson, I am John Neighbors. Same sports show, same sports channel tomorrow at noon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you then.